Hi everyone. Today we're going to talk about the Nephilim. We've all heard of giants, but where did they come from? Were they just huge humans, or were they something more sinister? Let's take a look at what the Bible has to say about the Nephilim. In order to understand who the Nephilim were, we need to go back to the beginning. In the book of Genesis, we read about the creation of the world and the creation of man. Man was created in God's image, both male and female, and they were made to rule over the earth. However, not long after man was created, sin entered the world, and as a result, suffering and death. As time went on, people began to live longer and longer lives. The oldest person mentioned in the Bible was Methuselah, who lived for 969 years. Now, some people believe that the reason why people could live such long lives back then was because they were giants. They believed that giants were created by God as a separate race of people who were bigger and stronger than normal humans. However, this is not true. The fact that people could live longer back then is simply because the world was in its infancy and the human body had not yet been corrupted by sin. As time went on, the world became more and more corrupt, and the human body became weaker and weaker. This is why people can only live for around 80 years today. Now, let's talk about the Nephilim. The word Nephilim means giants, or those who cause others to fall. They are mentioned in the Old Testament several times, but we learn the most about them in the book of Numbers, chapter 13, verses 32-33. And there we read, "And there we saw the Nephilim, the sons of Anak, who come from the Nephilim. And we were in our own sight as grasshoppers, and so we were in their sight." From this passage, we learn that the Nephilim were a race of giants that existed during the time of Moses. They were the descendants of a man named Anak, and they were very tall, so much so that the Israelites looked like grasshoppers in comparison. Now, some people believe that the Nephilim were the offspring of angels and human women. This is where we get the term half-human, half-angel. But again, this is not true. The Bible clearly states that the Nephilim were the sons of Anak, meaning that they were human. So why then does the Bible say that they were giants? Well, the answer is quite simple. The Nephilim were giants, plain and simple. They were a race of giants that existed during the time of the Old Testament. The Bible also tells us that the Nephilim were very evil. They were the offspring of Satan, and they used their size and strength to do evil. They were so evil, in fact, that God decided to wipe them out. In the book of Deuteronomy, we read, "And afterward it came to pass, when God had rested on the seventh day, that he created the Nephilim and filled the earth with creeping things, great and small, beast and bird, and they were doing what was right in their own eyes." Here, God says that the Nephilim were doing what was right in their own eyes. This means that they did not have any regard for God or his laws. They were completely consumed with themselves and their own desires. So what happened to them? Well, the Bible says that God saw how evil they were and he decided to destroy them. It says that God raised up enemies against them who defeated them, and their cities were burned with fire. So the Nephilim were completely destroyed. Now, some people believe that the Nephilim still exist today, but I don't believe that this is true. If they did still exist, then God would not be the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. The Nephilim were a race of giants that existed in the days of old, and they are no longer here today. If you don't believe me, then just look around. There are no giants anywhere to be found. I hope that this video has helped you to better understand who the Nephilim were. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.